impeachment to the entire world. America's borders are closed if you want to come here illegally. We only want people in our country who love America and want to follow our laws.
Since January, the Trump administration has ended the CBP-1 app, pressured Mexico to deploy troops to its northern border to curb migration flow to the U.S. border, ended catch and release by Border Patrol, and reinstated the Remain in Mexico policy, all factors contributing to the drop in illegal crossings. And as illegal crossings continue to plummet, U.S. Customs and Border Protection announcing the closing of several temporary processing facilities along the border. CBP says that each facility shut down saves the agency between $5 million to $30 million per month. And with the Trump administration carrying out its deportation operation, according to immigration attorney Rolando Vasquez, who represents Venezuelan migrants in the U.S., he says now some are choosing to self-deport.
I've never seen this many self-deportations in my whole time working as an immigration attorney. It's just it's numerous, the amount of clients and non-clients that I've come into contact that are self-deporting.
Just another day in the new golden age, my friends. Not only are we seeing record numbers of self-deportation surging, but now it's official. Articles of impeachment have indeed been filed against this absurd, idiotic, and moronic Obama-appointed judge who actually ordered the planes carrying illegal migrant gang members to return back to the United States mid-flight. Now, of course, Trump told this left-wing activist disguised as a judge where to stick it. I mean, these illegal gang members now are wasting away in El Salvador's notorious mega prison because they were legally designated terrorists under the Trump administration. But as you all know, the Democrats and their ultra-woke activist judges are doubling down on stupid and actually taking the side of these illegal gang members. And so in response to this absurdity of actually ordering terrorists who were here in this country illegally back into the country, Congressman Brandon Gill has submitted officially articles of impeachment against Judge James Boasberg, who is he is being accused of high crimes and misdemeanors in his blatant attempt at sabotaging the constitutionally derived powers of the president. In fact, a number of commentators are noting how utterly ridiculous this judicial decision was over the weekend and why this judge is blatantly violating his judicial authority. Sean Davis is noting that the Supreme Court actually explicitly ruled in the 1948 Ludeca versus Watkins case that Alien Enemy Act removals by the president preclude any judicial review. In other words, they are called non-judiciable. This judge had no legal place, given Supreme Court precedent, to even be looking at this case, let alone ruling on it. This was the entire premise of Stephen Miller's takedown on CNN. Did you see that? I mean, Stephen Miller, people were talking about, reporting a murder to 911 in terms of how Stephen Miller is able to just take down these CNN anchors. What CNN and legacy media basically been trying to do here is they're trying to bypass the Ludeca precedent that precludes judicial review for the enforcement of the Alien Enemy Act. They're trying to bypass that precedent by taking it upon themselves, very much like this judge, to claim that this is an invalid application of the act by Trump. I mean, you literally can't make this stuff up. The legacy media and the Democrats are appointing themselves as judges and then claiming that Trump has no right to do what he's doing because, well, pick your argument. He's appealing to an out-of-date law, like Tom Homan said. Do you think this is, what was that reporter, Australian or British reporter? Do you think this is good to appeal to a law that's 200 years old? And Tom Homan's like, our Constitution's older and we still hold to that. So they're saying he's appealing to an out-of-date law, or he's using a law that's only been used 3 times before in the history of our nation, or that he's using it all wrong. I mean, they're just, again, they're grasping at straws and nobody's buying it. I mean, literally nobody's buying it. No one outside of the most fringe lunatic left wants these guys back. No one. Oh, and as it turns out, Laura Loomer did some investigative sleuthing, and she found that this Obama-appointed judge does indeed have a daughter who's got an NGO. What do you know? Another liberal with an NGO. And that NGO provides legal services to illegals, including Tren de Aragua and MS-13 members, and is funded, at least indirectly, of course, by USAID. So once again, we're seeing yet another activist judge with family members deeply immersed in left-wing Democrat causes and politics that are at least indirectly getting USAID funding. Again, all of this is just a continuation of what we talked about earlier today. I mean, the Democrats continue to just fight one losing battle after another after another. Here is Brett Baer of Fox.
Brett, it just feels to me like the administration, the Democrats are just trying to push this boulder uphill, and they're going to get crushed by it.
I think so. I mean, Secretary of State Rubio was on Guy Benson's radio show the other day, yesterday, and was saying, listen, we know for a fact that everyone on those planes is an illegal immigrant. We know for a fact that most of those people have been charged with specific crimes. If there was a mistake, it's not because they were not an illegal immigrant and they're not going out of the country. And so I think they have a very common sense defense. And the question is whether these judges continue to come with the orders that they're coming with. It is pretty unique, this battle.
Yeah, that's why we're calling it the common sense consensus. That is basically what MAGA is right now. And I think Orrin McIntyre summarized most Americans' frustration with these Democrats and these judges and the legacy media very well. He points out it wasn't a violation of due process to allow millions of illegals, including murderers and rapists, across the border in the hopes of rigging elections. But it is now a violation of due process to send them home and protect the American people and the integrity of their elections. I mean, again, no one's buying this, but for whatever reason, that did not stop Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts from making an asinine comment in regard to these increased calls to impeach these rogue activist judges. Now, I kid you not, Roberts, in a statement, said, quote, "For more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose." Now, obviously, Roberts is getting seriously torched online for that stupid statement. He should have just kept his mouth shut. Mike Davis is asking, did the Chief Justice put out a statement like this when Democrats called for impeachment and murder of Supreme Court justices during the Dobbs case, or for Judge Cannon during the presidential records case? Or does the chief just want to help his DC buddies like Boasberg? And many are pointing out that 3 weeks ago, the Supreme Court had a chance to avoid all of this, but they punted. Again, Sean Davis wasn't having any of this. He wrote, quote, "For more than 2 centuries, the question of whether to impeach judges has been left solely to the elected representatives of the American people. John Roberts has no say in this matter, regardless of how much he wishes otherwise. Our Constitution gives John Roberts no power whatsoever when it comes to judicial impeachment, and it certainly doesn't give him the power to reject congressional impeachment when and if it comes. In fact, this unbridled arrogance from Roberts is the precise reason judicial impeachment is now being demanded for rogue judges. Had Roberts done his job and restrained inferior judges from overstepping their bounds and claiming for themselves authority and power which does not belong to them, we would not find ourselves, or he would not find himself, in this predicament. These calls are happening precisely because of John Roberts, not in spite of him. What John Roberts needs to understand right now is that his continued cowardice in the face of lawless judicial insurrection against the elected government of the people, not rightful criticism of judges, is the fatal threat to the legitimacy of the judiciary that he idolizes. The more he acts like a craven politician, the more we're going to treat him like one. A smarter man than him would understand that the moment the Chief Justice is viewed more as a slimy politician than a fair judge, it's over for him and his precious judiciary. Hear, hear. Was that good? Now, I think the key message that Congressman Brandon Gill is actually sending here with these articles of impeachment is that it's a green light for Trump to keep doing what he's been doing over the last couple of months. Now, given how the Democrats have just doubled down on stupid, there's just no way that this judge would be convicted in the Senate with the votes that are needed, the 60 plus votes that are needed to remove a judge. No Democrat will vote for it. So instead, I think Republicans are sending a message. I think the message that's being sent to President Trump is that Congress has got his back in all of this. If Trump decides to completely and totally blow off all of these federal judges' absurd decisions, which is more or less what he's been doing thus far, but if more ridiculous decisions get subsequently handed down, the message here with these articles of impeachment that have just been filed is that there is no way that Congress is going to get in the way of that. In other words, the Republicans in Congress have Trump's back to handle these judicial overreach decisions in any way he wants. And by the way, that goes double for Pam Bondi in the Justice Department and Kash Patel in the FBI. Trump is basically being granted immunity here to respond to these judges in any way he wants. That is until the Supreme Court rules on these decisions finally in June or July. Again, keep in mind, the Supreme Court could have already ruled on this. The four conservatives on there were livid when Justice Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett decided to punt this issue a few weeks back. They had an opportunity to render the decision as to whether or not these activist judges are indeed violating the separation of powers as guaranteed by the Constitution. They chose instead, via Roberts and Barrett, along with the three other liberals, to punt, or in their words, to let the appellate process play out, right? It was a procedural decision, not a merits-based decision. So again, Roberts in the end only has himself to blame for all of this insanity going on in the courts right now. But I think that these articles of impeachment are a clear green light to Trump from Congress to go ahead and blow off these activist judges until the Supreme Court renders its decision later on in the summer. And most commentators, given how the Supreme Court decided on presidential immunity last year, most commentators believe that they are going to shoot down these rogue judges. But until then, the Republicans in Congress have his back. Pam Bondi in the Justice Department have his back. Kash Patel in the FBI got his back. Trump needs to keep doing what he's been doing and continue to make it Christmas for us every single day. Unfortunately, after 4 years of bumbling Biden, Americans still have kitchen table problems. A lot of us are carrying really high credit card balances that charge us 20% or more each and every month. Gang, it's time to get rid of those. So homeowners, if you've been waiting to figure out how to get your finances in order, you need to call my friends at American Financing today. American Financing's salary-based mortgage consultants are helping homeowners just like you tap into their home's equity to get out of high-interest debt. Get this, American Financing is saving their average customer $800 a month just by doing this alone. Saving that kind of money every month should make this decision really easy. All it takes is a 10-minute, no cost, no obligation phone call to find out how much you can save. And to make it even sweeter, if you start today, you might be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. Call American Financing today, 866-889-1776. That's 866-889-1776. Or click the link below and visit them at americanfinancing.net/Turley.
And when they cut half the people, it's like evisceration by 1,000 cuts. Yeah. So you want to do this? Have the fight with us in Congress. Let's make sure we get the issues out there. I'm so mad. I'm spitting mad about this because it's hurting the people who can't vote. Children don't vote. Let's not take away their opportunity.
Man, straight into my veins. I voted for every syllable of that. That's Randy Weingarten again on MSNBC panicking. The Department of Education is slashing its workforce with reports that nearly half of the federal bureaucrats employed there have been fired or removed. All the cuts to the Department of Education are a direct response to the grotesque erosion of our educational standards. The very institutions meant to enlighten and empower the next generation are now drowning in a swamp of corruption and politically charged agendas. The Department of Education itself is under fire. Its bloated budget's a monument to wasteful spending. Parents are rightly outraged as their children are fed toxic ideologies instead of valuable knowledge. Schools have been pushing radical narratives that confuse young minds, all while our kids fall behind in fundamental education. And the Trump administration is finally doing something about this disaster. Trump has been rooting out wokeness at every level, starting with our military, Pete Hegseth, and the FAA. And now he's got his sights set on our educational system. What we have to understand here is that the disasters in our nation's education system far exceed the need for mere budget cuts. They manifest in declining literacy rates and a curriculum that increasingly serves divisive narratives rather than in facts. But today we've got a distinguished guest, Ben Merkel, who's leading the charge against this educational corruption. He is the president of New St. Andrews College, a distinct place of learning for students after high school that prioritizes the eternal values of truth, goodness, and beauty at the collegiate level. Ben, welcome, my friend. Great to have you back. Haven't seen you in a while.
Thanks so much. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's an honor always to have you, my friend. So the Trump administration's recent cuts to the Department of Education are obviously signaling a major shift, seemingly in the right direction. So, Ben, in your view, what more needs to be done to reform education, particularly at the federal level?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a glorious start. Like, as you said, right into my veins. This is exactly what we voted for, and it's funny seeing people so distraught and seemingly surprised at something that was. I'm going to close the Department of Education. I mean, this was clear. There's no fake or dodge or anything. This is what was promised, and he's making good on his promise, which I suppose is surprising. We tend to not expect people to actually do that, but Trump is doing a wonderful job of making good on the promise. I would say, what's going to happen is it's going to get divided up and probably passed on to other departments. And so there's still a lot of work that has to happen because a lot of these same functions are going to be there, just passed on to other departments. I think that one major thing is, student loans and to a lesser extent Pell Grants, but I think student loans especially need to get attacked. I think what needs to happen is I think student loans need to be either privatized or colleges need to be on the hook for colleges should be backing those loans instead of the American taxpayer. If you as a college believe in the quality of your product, you should be willing to put your endowment, to stake your endowment on that. Colleges should be the guarantors for these student loans. And I think if you did that, you would suddenly see a real market correction as colleges start to realize really quickly what's irresponsible and what's responsible. I'd love to see that happen. I'd love to see Pell Grants trimmed or eliminated entirely. I think one thing that is a real thing that we're going to have to look out for is frequently, personnel is policy. And so dividing up the Department of Ed and just pushing them into other departments, if you've got the same people going into that department, you've just kind of spread the toxicity out. That's why I think it's really great to see the elimination of, cutting half of these positions and just laying them off. But I think as these duties are passed out, you're really going to have to make sure that you're not getting sabotaged by mid-level bureaucrats who have managed to sort of carve out ways to hang on and continue the problems there. And then the last thing I think is we have to. Trump has said this needs to be pushed to the state level. which is, I think, exactly right. He should be pushing it down from the federal level, but that only works if people at the state level are ready to grab the baton and take it to the next step. And I think one of the real dangers right now is, one really important principle of war is the principle of pursuit. When you win a battle, you're exhausted, you're elated that you've won and all of that, and there's a strong tendency to want to now rest. But it's really important when you win a battle to immediately pursue, because otherwise your enemy just regroups and you're going to fight them again tomorrow, and maybe you're going to lose. But if you can pursue, you can actually make this victory into something lasting. And I think a lot of us conservatives who are watching Trump's victory at the federal level, there's a little bit of we're kind of armchair quarterbacks watching the NFL game and rooting for all of this happening, but not realizing that if this gets past the state level, we need to suit up and get in, and we need to carry on this work at the state level.
Yes. Yeah, I'm coming up with an alliteration here as I'm listening to you. Budget, bureaucrats, and backyard politics. I think that's
there you go.
I think that's brilliant. I love that, dude. That's like my video tomorrow. That is so cool. Thank you. No, I think that's so brilliant. I love how you're hitting it at the financial level, and in terms of all the loans and how we end up bailing them out or how it's used as a political football during the Biden era with the student loan forgiveness. It was just crazy. And then the bureaucrats at how the people or policy when all said and done. And then we're gonna have to take it at the state level. It's great he's bringing it to the state education back to the state level, but well, sorry California, sorry Vermont. You guys are gonna still have your problems. Whereas at least now it's giving a chance for sane states, red states, as it were, to really do something here. By the way, congratulations! I heard Idaho is getting an extra electoral college vote in the 2030 census coming up. I don't know if you heard that. So I guess a lot of people are moving.
I thought it was coming. So
yeah, it's great. It's awesome. It's all the red states. They're all gaining. So I'm just curious about. I mean, you've been in this on the front lines of this for years now. How are we able to get here to even begin with? How did this disaster happen? I know, so it starts, education department starts in 1979, but it didn't take long for all this corruption and all these radical ideologies to infest the system. So how did the Department of Education end up becoming such a bloated monument of waste and
as far as I understand it, I mean, it was Department of Education is started by Carter, and it was a campaign promise to the teachers unions that it was kind of the way he gets their vote is the promise of starting a Department of Education. So it was already, as far as I can tell, it was from the inception. I think it was already captured by a certain kind of progressive spirit that was always going to have the steering wheel between the shoulder blades, and so I think that it's been that way for some time now. The constant increasing of federal financial aid through student loans and then through the Pell Grant, constantly increasing that, and then attaching, that's all administered by the Department of Education. So for these schools, for these colleges and universities, that's their they can't live without that. If you cut that funding, a lot of these schools go down or have to completely remake themselves. And so they're going to answer to the whims of this department really quickly. And so that's when you start getting under Obama and then under Biden, you've got these dear colleague letters about, the guys getting to use the girls' shower and that sort of thing. And it's attached to that federal money. So everybody's going to try to figure out how to accommodate it one way or another.
Right. I know you guys are private, a private college, but did you feel the pressure of that at all, particularly during the Obama years, Biden years, of having to capitulate to some of those?
No, we don't, because we don't take any of the Title IV money. That's Pell Grants and student loans or any other government grants. We don't take any federal money. We don't take any state money. During the COVID crisis, I remember the state called me up and offered me a check. They got a check for $150,000 or something like that. They just want the address to send it, and telling them, no, we don't want your money. So once you say no to the money, there's significant freedom. Now, you still have to negotiate, Department of Education still oversees, well, not oversees, they have influence on accreditation agencies. Although there's a certain amount of independency there. And so they can still kind of try to steer things with us a little bit, but we've got significant distance. You never can get all the way out of everything, but we've got enough distance by not taking the Title IV money that we're kind of like, we would be the last ones anybody would get.
I see. Yeah, and that creates that at least a somewhat safe buffer for sure. I know I talked to a lot of parents. I was in the classical education world for 2 decades, and I know a lot of parents are very frustrated. They're frustrated with this college system where the costs keep going up, but the standards all seem to just be plummeting.
Yeah.
What hope is there? You're on the forefront of an educational renaissance that's happening right now. Give parents a sense of hope that this golden age is extending, most especially into the realm of college education.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it's just really important to speak in terms of hope. I think that it's really easy to get this idea that everything always ships to this progressive left and then gets destroyed. And that's just not the case. And if you need proof, look at what we're living through right now. It's possible to turn things around and start winning. And I would say, to the best of my understanding, the most significant win we've had in the last several decades has been the launch and growth of the classical Christian education movement. We've built something that's K-12, that's distinct, it's different, and it's the best. And I think that is our biggest win at the moment. The unfortunate thing is it goes K-12. We need that next layer of colleges that actually make good on the education that kids with this education are now worthy of. That's what NSA strives to be, but I think we need about 30 more like us.
Yes. Yeah. But I love what you're saying, because it is a tangible example of how the church is really doing something better than anybody else right now. That's the beauty. That's what I always loved about classical education. I could point objectively to space and say, you see that over there? That's infinitely better than anything you guys got over in your woke secular world. Infinitely better.
Absolutely.
And, can you give some examples to people, especially those who may not know what classical Christian education is all about? But at New St. Andrews, you are a classical Christian education rooted in truth, goodness, and beauty. Can you share some specific ways your curriculum equips students to, particularly to just resist the toxic ideologies we see pervading in other institutions, but also in such a way that allows them to flourish as human beings?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, probably the most important thing is our trying to stay as clear as we can on the Lordship of Jesus Christ. And so our freshmen begin in theology, they end their senior year in theology. They're inside a robust worshiping community. So I think that is the premier thing we do is pointing them towards Christ. Under that, we've recovered what has been the traditional liberal arts education. So you can go back 1,000 years, and this is what colleges in the West were doing. The liberal arts education, it's a certain collection of intellectual disciplines put together in these courses, reading through a time-honored stack of great texts, and through that, teaching them a coherent view of the world, coherent under Christ, but coherent in that. This is one of the things that I think is really distinctive about the liberal arts, is that you teach these subjects as things that inform and relate to one another. So I see one of the real errors of the modern college movement is that we order our education along these very strict vocational disciplines. So you're learning just these vocational skills, and we don't want you to learn about that. We want you to learn about that. We want you to specialize in learning just how to perform this skill, with the idea that you'll get a piece of paper that allows you to perform this skill out in the workforce. And if you want to perform a different skill, you need to come and get the other right piece of paper for that one.
Right.
And what we've done is we've created this picture of the world where it's like there are little sidewalks that you're allowed to walk on. I've got this degree that allows me to walk this sidewalk. I don't go off this sidewalk because I'm not licensed for that. Right. Liberal arts education, I like to say, basically gives you four-wheel drive. It tells you get off the sidewalk, go where you want to go. And I think that relates to being under Christ, because we know we serve the King of the universe. All of this is his. And so you can get off the sidewalk and you can explore. And one of the things I love seeing in NSA grads is the disproportionate number of highly entrepreneurial starting businesses that you didn't even know that could exist. And that's really, I mean, that honestly is the future of the workforce. Try to pick the job skill that everybody needs 20 years from now. How do you even know what that's going to be? The job market is constantly changing. I think what you need is the adaptability and the understanding that all of creation coheres, and you are able to go out and master it. And I think that's really important. Other things, you know, we do seek to restore rigor to the college education. It's shocking how much the rigor has dropped in the American university. And that, you know, people roll their eyes. That's just people always saying, you know, kids these days, you know, I'm not being the grumpy old man. There's some really strong data to show. I think it's around 1960, they used to measure, they began measuring the amount of work that a college student has to put into their work, you know, their college work over the course of a week. And the average student did 40 hours a week, which is what you would expect, you know, 40-hour week job. I think the last one I saw was down to 17 hours.
Wow.
Now, if you assume 12 hours of going to class, that's 5 hours of studying, compared to 12 hours of going to class in 1960 took 28 hours of studying. You know, 28 hours down to 5 hours. College is not rigorous anymore at all. And that's, I think, one of the main reasons why we see these students graduating and not able to go on and get jobs. It's not that jobs aren't there. It's just that they aren't ready to work. They've lost that ability.
Yeah, they've lost the drive, the intellectual, moral drive to build. And again, I was reading a really interesting article on Elon Musk, and the moral imagination of Elon Musk, and this journalist was making the argument that for Musk and Einstein, these fellows, they would never come up with the things they come up with without this incredibly nourished imagination.
Yeah.
And the very fact that he wants to go to Mars and all this sort of stuff all comes from the books he was reading, and just the total world the literary world that he was immersing himself into.
Yeah,
one of the things I love about what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's why Elon it's interesting, because I think the fact that he didn't get the college degree is a bit of a point of pride for him, because I think that he would have seen that degree as telling him to stay on the sidewalk. You know, we need an education that pushes you out, that tells you go wherever, achieve something big.
That's it. So let's work this out in practice. So how do students who have found themselves failed by a broken educational system — I don't know any other way of putting our educational system right now than broken — and how do you take them in and transfigure them into leaders who can actually ultimately fix this disaster?
Yeah, I mean, we're blessed that we have this small little town with an incredibly robust church community. We don't do dorms, because we've found that dorms basically intensify the I don't know, the infantile, you know,
that's
quality.
Beautifully put. That's wonderfully put.
It infantilizes the whole thing in this imaginary little world. So we want our students to be in the real world. If you come here, we say, find an apartment, figure out how to make grilled cheese, figure out how to get, you know, Wi-Fi and do your laundry and all that. And what you discover is when you push that kind of responsibility onto them, these young kids, they're at 18, they're ready for these kinds of challenges. They want to be treated like adults. They want to walk into a class and get an assignment that scares the snot out of them. They actually do want that. So being willing to push them a little bit, expect them to be like adults, to give them this very rigorous integrated curriculum, where we're going to expect them to work a full week, be ready for these assignments. We really emphasize being able to write, being able to speak. Your finals here are a one-on-one with just you and the teacher. AI is not going to help you at all. You have to come in ready to know your stuff. And And then, like I said, lived out in this robust Christian community, it ends up becoming this time of both testing and pushing yourself to the limit while also being nurtured and mentored by faithfulness in a way that I see that the product I'm confident is one of the best that is out there, and has been really rewarding to see.
Yeah. I mean, I saw it in my academic career of 20 years. I just watched student after student. Gang, if you don't know, I had a number of different students who ended up going to NSA, New St. Andrews College. And boy, I think 80% of them end up staying there. They just love the community.
That is often the thing we're taunted with, that students will stay here, get married, and never leave. And I would say we do have a high percentage that end up starting families that get married their senior year, and many of them do stay. But I would say if you watch them, they stay for 3 or 4 years, and then they go and they start something somewhere else. But it's like they're at this moment where they're starting a family and they've got their first job and they want to stay where they're getting mentored a little bit longer. But it's usually after a few years they go, okay, now it's time for me to go do something.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's a testimony to how life transformative NSA really is. And I've just heard testimony after time. I couldn't even count them of how many lives you have transformed through the college experience there. Gang, there really is an amazing educational renaissance that's happening. We talk about classical education renaissance going on all across the country, but really ground zero of that educational renaissance is right here, NSA, New St. Andrews College. And you cannot imagine the amazing just magic of education that's happening there. So if you want to find out more, just click on the link in the description below. They'll send you tons of information. You're going to absolutely love it. And I think if you go out there for a visit, you'll see exactly what Ben's talking about. This is an amazing, amazing moment in our nation's time right now. And I really think in many ways started in Moscow, Idaho at NSA. So definitely click on that link below and check them out. Thanks so much, Ben. Let's have you back soon. I mean, every day's Christmas right now in many respects. So
anytime.
Can't imagine what's going to happen in education over the next year.
Yeah, it's a blast.
Awesome. And did you see this? President Trump just signed an executive order outlining his plans to create America's first national sovereign wealth fund, and it'll need to be filled up with assets fast. I mean, Trump wants to go live in the next 90 days with this. The Wall Street types are already trying to pack it with real estate and infrastructure and pieces of trendy companies like TikTok. But let's not forget about gold. Sovereign wealth funds love to buy gold in bulk. Australia's been loading up. Saudi Arabia is buying the world's largest gold mine to supply itself. And even tiny Singapore recently added more than 100 metric tons of gold to its vaults. Now, can you imagine what would happen to the per ounce price of gold, which has already been surging sky high since Trump took office, if America's new sovereign wealth fund followed international best practices and made gold a part of its diversified portfolio? I mean, it would potentially make our country a brand new mega buyer in an already tight market. And when there's limited supply and huge demand, the impact on prices, well, let's just say you're going to want to be ready. Now, there's a simple way to get ready, too. It's all laid out for you in the free gold report from my partners at turleytalkslikesgold.com. You'll want to request your copy right away. You don't have a lot of time in this. President Trump has put the world on notice. A new sovereign wealth fund for America may be coming perhaps in as little as the next 90 days. Take advantage of the time you have to prepare. Get your free gold report now at turleytalkslikesgold.com.